Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Solvable Mysteries podcast. Uh, I've been away for a few weeks, so my apologies for that. I had some things to take care of, and I didn't really have the time to record. Last week, I was even out of town, so I wasn't even able to record like physically because I didn't have my recording gear and everything like that. But since we're back this week, and since one very interesting disappearance case caught my attention, I really want to talk about it and bring up the latest information because we just had information, I think, on the 27th about Jason Landry, the 21-year-old Texas State University student who went missing back in 2020 on December 13th under very mysterious circumstances. And when I'm gonna read you the details, and it might seem a little bit weird, some of the details, very spooky, but I think everyone has kind of connected the dots to what may have happened to this man, Jason Landry. I'm not sure how many of you guys are aware about this disappearance, but I think locally in the Texas area around where Jason disappeared, I think this case was fairly well known, so I can't wait to get into it and present my findings this week. Jason was 21 years of age when he disappeared. He is listed at 6'1", and he weighed around 170 pounds. He seemed quite a skinny guy for his height, I would say. He's white. He has brown hair. His hair description is that his hair was above collar length, but shaggy style. He had a beard cut to a goatee. Both of his eyes are brown. He usually wears glasses, but does not have them with him, or did not have them with him when he disappeared back in 2020. He's presumed to be wearing contact lenses, or at least he was presumed to be wearing contact lenses when he first vanished back in 2020. So as I've mentioned earlier, he went missing on December 13th, 2020, when he was allegedly driving back home to Missouri City, which is basically an area located very close to Houston. And he was leaving San Marcos, where Texas State University campus is located. The distance between San Marcos and Missouri City, if you take the fastest route, which Jason Landry apparently took, at least for the first, maybe like, let's say 30 minutes, would take you around 2 hours and 49 minutes, so around close to like 3 hours, because it's 160-ish miles in total. So it's a very long drive, and it's interesting because apparently Jason began this route back home at 10:55 p.m. in the evening. That would mean that he would have arrived to Missouri City way past midnight. We're talking about maybe like 2 a.m. at night. Also, for some better reference, December 13th, when he went missing, was actually Sunday. Well, in theory, he went missing in the early morning hours of Monday. Well, not even early morning hours of Monday. He vanished sometime shortly after midnight, so technically on the 14th, but he initiated this trip still on the 13th, which was a Sunday, and he was driving back home, allegedly to spend like a Christmas break with his family, but these details regarding if he really was going to spend the Christmas break with his family is a little bit hazy, because just an hour prior to him leaving for this trip, he was on a Snapchat video call with a friend who actually recorded the video, and we're gonna be looking at that video later on the podcast, at least here on the YouTube channel. I'm definitely planning on showing the visuals for that. He was actually rolling up some joints, and it seemed like he was smoking some weed, but we're gonna get into that. So I think the general premise was that he was going back to his family, but his family back in Missouri City was not expecting him, at least on the 13th. Maybe they were expecting him in the general, I guess, area of these days. You know what I mean? Maybe like on the 15th, 16th. Like, I'm not really sure exactly when his family was expecting him to return home, but on that Snapchat video, and there are complications with that Snapchat video. Apparently, it didn't record the audio, just video. So we have to go by what the other friend who was on the video call with Jason told law enforcement. So we have to go, based on his account of what happened. I think what Jason wanted to do is actually go meet up with that friend who was in Missouri City, and they were gonna be playing video games, something like that, because when law enforcement located Jason's abandoned car, which we're also going to get into shortly, they found his, I think, PlayStation, some sort of gaming gear. So I would assume maybe like controllers, things of that nature. Oh, and I want to also give a little bit more context about the time when this is all happening. This is happening on December 13th, 2020. And if you guys can recall, 2020 was actually the height of the coronavirus pandemic. And I've listened to an interview, where Jason's family members were kind of describing Jason's life leading up to his disappearance. Apparently, Jason was not having a good time in Texas State University because at least 2 times he was ordered to isolate, essentially, and he wasn't interacting with people. He was, he was studying sound engineering. He was really into music, and for someone who's like into music, into that kind of a academic pursuit of that kind of field, you probably want to be around people, you know what I mean? Arts, music, you kind of want to be around people, but he wasn't. He was actually stuck in his apartment for a very long time. So we have to also take this into consideration when we kind of think about his mental state and things that will unravel as I progress with this story. But let's move on. Now, as I mentioned, the route that Jason had to take to get to Missouri City was fairly straightforward. You had to basically drive through these little roads from San Marcos, and you would have to pass the city of Lulling, Texas, which he did enter. And we know that because Jason was using a app called Waze. It's like Google Maps, where you could kind of see the directions that you have to drive in order to get to a certain destination, right? So he was using this app, and as long as he was using the Waze app, we kind of can track where his car was going. But sometime when in the city of Luling, he switched from using the Waze app to using the Snapchat app. And I think the general idea here is that maybe he wanted to check his messages on Snapchat, and subsequently he did not take the correct exit out of Lulling that would have taken him on the I-10, and once he's on the I-10, he literally just has to go straight for 2 hours, and he's in the Houston area. There's no turns, no nothing. So he missed that turn that would take him to the I-10, and he kind of gets on this weird dirt road in the middle of nowhere. There's no cars, no nothing. It's a dirt road, and he heads on this dirt road apparently for a little while. Now there's a window of 67 minutes where we do not know what happened, because he loses his digital footprint is lost sometime. Let me actually check this. I don't want to confuse you guys. Right, so he loses his digital footprint at 11:24 p.m. and then his car is found abandoned in that dirt road 31 minutes past midnight. So essentially that's those 67 minutes from the time that he stopped using the Waze app and when a volunteer firefighter who was heading back from a call or something like that stumbled upon Jason's car that was abandoned in that road, you know what I mean, in the middle of the road, and he called the cops to report this situation, and we're gonna be talking about that shortly as well. Also, Jason was driving a 2003 Nissan Altima, 2003 Nissan Altima. Just also additional reference for you guys. Now, cops arrive, right, and they see that Jason is not there. His car is kind of banged up, but he's not there. And just to paint you guys a better picture, especially for the people that are listening to this podcast, so basically this dirt road that Jason took was essentially going north. So he was driving north until he crashed the car, and then when the police arrived at around like 30 minutes past midnight, something like that. They found the car. Jason is nowhere to be seen. They're just assuming that, oh, this is just a regular, like, you know what I mean? Like someone hit the road, whatever. They're gonna pick up the car the next day. Apparently, this was a not that uncommon. You know what I mean? At least what the law enforcement described this situation as. But the weird thing is that now, going back south, so basically going back to the town of Lulling, you know what I mean, heading in the direction back, they found 800 feet away first his bag, and his bag contained, his personal effects as well as some joints, some weed joints, and then 100 feet even more south, so in total 900 feet south from the car, Jason's clothes were there on the road. So he was butt naked at that time. So this is where things are kind of like, yo, what? Why? You know what I mean? Why would you remove your clothes? It doesn't make any sense. But trust me, guys, like, I think the law enforcement, I think everyone kind of now like put everything together. So we're gonna get into why he was butt naked soon as well. Okay, let's move on. So basically, Jason's parents received the call at 2 a.m. in the night, so apparently around an hour and 30 minutes later, from law enforcement to report that their son's car has been found abandoned in this dirt road. Now, the family is shocked, and they're on it. They're basically arranging family members to go look at that situation. Jason's father was very active and still is super active, very good guy. You can tell he's a pastor. He talks about God a lot and how religion is very important for his family and for Jason. And so he basically goes there and he like does most of evidence collection initially, because the law enforcement, they didn't even take pics. They didn't do anything, to be honest. They kind of mishandled the situation because they were not assuming they were dealing with a missing persons case. They were kind of assuming this was potentially a college student who was avoiding some sort of a DUI, potential DUI case, and was just on the run a little bit. So for law enforcement, this did not ring alarm bells initially. So that's why they kind of mishandled it. And Jason's family was very critical of law enforcement's decision to do this, essentially. So Jason's father arrived, I think, initially to the impound parking lot, because I think police, during the night of the 14th, when Jason's car was discovered, they initially took the car back to the impound lot. They didn't dust it for fingerprints or anything like that, but we do have information that the officer and the volunteer firefighter, and from the body cam footage that we will review shortly, we can see 3 people in total, but I don't think anyone stepped inside of the car, meaning that we can still hope to retrieve any useful DNA evidence if they exist, which the consensus is they don't, because the consensus is he was alone. But other than that, the other interesting part here is that when Jason's father went to the impound lot the next morning, or maybe on the 14th, I'm not really sure about that, but then he kind of opened the door because the door was kind of, well, he had the lock because he was the officially registered owner of that 2003 Nissan Altima. He found Jason's phone, and I think he found it in a weird location, like kind of close to like on the floor, somewhere on the floor in the front seat or something like that. It was almost an it was almost like if it was an indication that maybe the phone kind of fell out of his hand or like off of his body as he crashed the car, or he could have lost it under the seat of the front seat or something like that, back in Lulling. So we still don't know, but we know that his phone was found there. And the issue with the phone was that it was locked and they did not have the PIN code. So actually, Jason's father was even like telling other parents like, yo, you better know your child's PIN code, because in these situations, not knowing the PIN code to a phone is a disaster. They had to wait for a very long time to get access to the phone, and they lost a lot of like valuable time here. So not knowing the PIN code was very, let's put it this way, like a shitty situation for the family for sure. Now his father arrives to the scene of where the car was crashed, and he found that Jason's clothes were scattered all over the place. Now, there were some confusing reports earlier on in the case when it was breaking back in like early 2021 that law enforcement did not find the clothes or something like that like the father had to go and pick up the clothes himself, which is kind of true. He had to do that, but from the body cam footage that we will review shortly, we can definitely tell that the people at the scene were aware of the scattered clothes. So thinking right now, I'm kind of weirded out a little bit that they did not think that this was, a potential red alert, like someone is out in the freezing cold, because this was December. It was very cold. It was around like 30 Fahrenheit, like it was 2 Celsius. It was a cold day in Texas, even for a Texas winter. It was very cold apparently. So someone without any clothes, but then again, the police doesn't really know if those are the clothes that Jason was actually wearing at the time, or maybe these are just some random clothes that he had. But they did find later on, well, I think Jason's father did find Jason's underwear and his other clothes, but the waistband of his underwear had a blood spot, and apparently that's the only blood that was on the scene. Essentially, there wasn't any blood in the car, from what I've gathered. Apparently, the car, the accident in the car wasn't really life-threatening. I don't think the airbag even popped out. So essentially, it was a very survivable car crash. Initially, at least that's what we think. But there was blood on the waistband. Now, the official, at least what law enforcement basically stated regarding this blood spot on the waistband of Jason's underwear is that he may have contracted a small cut if he touched barbed wire fences, because on both sides of this dirt road where Jason crashed his car, there were barbed wired fences. So there's a good chance that maybe like he kind of got cut in that area around, like the waistband, when he touched the barbed wire. And we're gonna look at this shortly. So a few days later, the Texas Department of Public Safety and basically Sergeant Dion Cockrell said that right now we have no indication of any foul play at all. We don't know if maybe somebody picked him up or if he just wandered to an area where we haven't searched or found yet. So this was very kind of spooky, because like you think, oof, what if someone kind of drove up to him and he was like, and they were like, yo, get out of your clothes, and in the car You know what I mean? Pronto. What if it was like that? So it was kind of because there's no sign of Jason. Where could he be? It's just a dirt road. Like, how hard is it to find Jason at this point? So this was, this was like really creepy and spooky initially, for sure. Texas EquaSearch sent crews out to the rural area of central Texas where Jason's car was found to assist in the search, and essentially for 9 days, searchers utilized multiple resources, including a helicopter with infrared cameras, drones, side scan sonar, scent dogs, as well as searchers on foot, ATVs, and horseback. Online rumors said that Jason's scent was actually tracked to an abandoned house in the area, but this has not been confirmed yet. And we're actually going to look at this abandoned house because I was able to locate it on the Google Maps, and actually we even have one of the law enforcement dudes who arrived at the scene. They're actually kind of did a search of that house on day one, initially on that same night. This is kind of creepy. Like, that house is all abandoned like that. I wonder if Jason actually stumbled upon that house, because that house was really creepy. You'll see, guys. And then lastly, 9 days later, searchers announced that the area had been searched as thoroughly as it could possibly be searched by their volunteer teams, and they could no longer continue searching without new leads from law enforcement. But law enforcement came back over the years, I've heard, at least 7 times, and they did a ton of searches. We're actually going to be looking soon at a case file that has been released. I believe the case file was released this year, early January of 2022. Police actually released the body cam footage, other stuff as well. So we're going to be delving into these new details that, I haven't seen anyone on YouTube or on the podcast space kind of cover, and I think they kind of paint a really good picture. Well, at least for me, let's put it this way. For me, I kind of suspect I know what may have happened here, but that's just my opinion. So we're gonna get into that soon. Okay, before we jump into those further details, quickly want to run over the general timeline, maybe just because some people want to have a better picture of what has happened over the years. So we have, 2022, December 13th, Jason Landry leaves his apartment in San Marcos at 10:55 p.m. to drive to Missouri City for a Christmas break, which we know was actually to drive to a friend's house in Missouri City to smoke some weed and play video games, and then maybe after that go back to his family. But that's what we now know because new details have been basically provided this year. The same day, Jason stops using his Waze app and starts using Snapchat at around 11:24 p.m. in the evening, and that's where his digital footprint ends. 67 minutes later, at 31 a.m. past midnight on the 14th of December, Jason's Nissan Altima is found crashed on Salt Flat Road in Lilling. 2 days later, investigators tell the media they are focusing on Jason's digital footprint and are looking into his phone as well as some other personal belongings. Also, they tell the media that they had traveled to Jason's parents' home to retrieve items that were in Jason's car at the time of his disappearance, because initially Jason's father, I believe, retrieved those items and took them back home. Now, Jason's phone was locked, and it may have taken them up to a month to unlock it, which was very bad, of course. Law enforcement at that point had no indication of any foul play. Their official quote was, "We don't know if maybe somebody picked him up or if he just wandered to an area where we haven't searched or found him there yet." So this was 2 days after he disappeared on the 16th. Now, 3 days later, on December 19th, investigators had drained a nearby pond that search dogs had indicated towards, but they didn't find Jason's body there because at that time there was a lot of speculation that maybe Jason had drowned into this pond. And I think I know where this pond is on the map. They didn't really give give much details about this pond, but they were able to drain it, and they did not find Jason's body in that pond. So they continued searching, and 3 days later after that, initially 9 days after Jason had disappeared, on the 22nd of December, searchers announced that they had not been able to locate Jason in the area, and they cannot continue searching without new tips coming in. So, a helicopter with infrared cameras, drones, side scan sonar, scent dogs, as well as searchers on foot, ATVs, and horseback were used in the search. So within the 9 days of his disappearance, all of these resources have been utilized to find Jason, or at least his remains, and they weren't able to find it, which is definitely strange to me. Like, how far could have Jason walked in the freezing weather, butt naked? Where is his body? That's definitely spooky. Like, the only thing that kind of doesn't make sense to me, that not a single bone, nothing was found of Jason. It's like he vanished into thin air. Where the hell is Jason at this point? The following month, on January 29th of the following year, 2021, so basically around a little bit over a month and a half after Jason's disappearance, investigators announced that they now had access to most of Jason's phone and computer data, but at that time they were still waiting for search warrants from social media companies to be returned with the data. I think they were specifically waiting for maybe that Snapchat details. Now we know what they contained, but at that time they were still kind of trying to put everything together. Now, very funky things started happening by the end of that year. So mainly at November 13th of 2021, so basically almost a year after Jason's disappearance, which is a long time, private investigator for that family, well, basically a group called Project Absentia out of San Antonio, who worked as private investigators for that family, they told the media that they had uncovered circumstantial evidence that Jason was not alone at the time of his disappearance. Now, the private investigator team strongly believes that a geofence warrant will enable them to locate a suspect or suspects, as well as additional witnesses. So nothing really came about this. And I'm kind of calling bullshit on this private investigator team who said we uncovered circumstantial evidence that Jason was not alone. I mean, maybe I'm wrong here, so my apologies if I'm wrong, but I didn't really find anything to kind of confirm this. Everything that I've looked at kind of indicates that Jason was indeed alone, but they were kind of pushing for that geofence warrant. And I was like, what the hell is a geofence warrant? It's this new technology where they can get a certain area, like a square in the map, and they can request the phone companies to literally tell them every single phone that had pinged in that location during a certain period of time. Now, I believe they weren't able to get this geofence thing done because for legal reasons and because a lot of private information would be disclosed. I think they weren't able to get this done, but they were really pushing for this. There was a lot of signatures. I saw like over 10,000 signatures of people just signing the petition to get this geofence done. The logic behind doing the geofence is that at that point, and maybe even up to this point, the family and the private investigators believed that maybe there was foul play involved in Jason's disappearance, and by using that geofence technology, we could actually see every other phone that was in the area when Jason disappeared. And since this is such a rural area with so little traffic, it's pretty much safe to say that anyone who pinged in that area must have had some sort of a connection to Jason. So it's actually probably likely that other than the police officers and that volunteer firefighter, nobody else's phones would have pinged at midnight in that dirt road in the middle of nowhere. But if someone's phone pinged, like for say like Kyle from San Antonio, who's like a drug dealer, if his phone pinged, we'd be like, oh shit. But I don't think this geofence ever got done, so we'll never know, unfortunately. Okay, let's move on in the timeline. Let's keep it moving. So the next year, essentially this year, 2022, on January 13th, more than a year. Well, this is like almost two. Well, yeah, this is more than a year after Jason had vanished. The sheriff's office had made a lot of evidence public. And this is mainly the why I'm actually doing this case today, because I don't think anyone addressed this new information. So there was a lot of new information released. There was information released about what Jason was actually Googling before he vanished, and there's like basically a lot of things got released. The body cam, they released the case file. I think they released they released that Snapchat video, the Snapchat video that Jason took. Well, he was on a video call, I'm sorry, and his friend on the other side of that call was recording him. So that recording of that Snapchat video was also released this year, earlier in the year. So we're gonna actually be going through all of that soon, because that's the real meat and potatoes of the podcast today. So I'm just gonna leave it at that, and then a few other interesting developments happened. So basically on March 27th, so just a few months ago, a new search was actually underway. So they are still searching for Jason, but apparently they're not finding anything. And then just a few days ago, a man was found unresponsive in New York City. So basically this is an unknown man who was found like unresponsive in New York City, and there were like pictures of him, and I think NYPD was like, yo, who is this guy, please help us identify him. And from that image where he's like all passed out in the hospital, he looks exactly like Jason Landry. So a lot of people were like, oh my god, this is literally Jason Landry from like 2020. This is the guy. But it has been now confirmed that he's not the guy, and that other dude's family came forward and they were like, he's not Jason, he's like our son or something like that. So that's not him, unfortunately. And that's the latest on the timeline, because just now something regarding Jason happened. But yeah, let's keep it moving. This is the car that was driven by Jason Landry, the Nissan Altima 2003, when it was found in the impound lot. So this is how it looked. So as you can see, the damage looks quite crazy from the back, and from what I've gathered, initially the back side of the car hit one of the trees first, and then it kind of forced the front to crash as well. And we have another angle. So this is maybe an indication for us that, as you can see, the the driver's seat position did not receive a lot of damage. And we can tell from this basically picture right here that Jason shouldn't have, in theory, sustained any serious injuries. This is the general site of where it happened. Now you can see more tire tracks here, but that's because these belong to the cars that towed the car away, etc., etc. Because at that time, there were more cars present at the scene. Now, I really wanted to jump to the map. Kind of paint a better picture. So as we can see, Jason was leaving Texas State University at the city of San Marcos, and he left sometime like 10:55 p.m. in the evening. By 10:05 p.m., we can track him at this particular location, and we know all of these locations because of the Waze app that he was using. This is where he was at 11:11 p.m. This is where he was at 11:15 p.m. This is a fairly straightforward drive. He's taking the correct route that he needs to take. But this is where things kind of get a little funky, because he now enters the town of Lulling, And around this intersection, he stops using Waze. He starts using Snapchat. Once again, maybe he's using the Snapchat to, check for messages. Who really knows? Now, this is apparently the intersection where his digital footprint stops. And there's actually even theories that he may have been carjacked in Lulling sometime in the evening, and that's why his car was found. So essentially, if he wanted to go back home to Houston area, to Missouri City, he was supposed to, at this particular intersection, he was supposed to go down south, take the right. He was supposed to take the right, but he actually drove past this location. And I actually found a very cool Reddit comment that kind of explained the logic, potentially why Jason did not take this right, because as we all now know, Jason continued heading in the east direction, and then he took this dirt road, and we can see that this is the Salt Flat Road. We can see that this is the location where his car was found. Now, why he took this road right here instead of just going down south, because he had to go down south. I think he had to get onto this road, onto this road. He had to get on I-10. And as I've said, if he was on the I-10, he literally just had to go for like a few hours into the eastward direction, and he would have reached the Houston area. But he never did that. He never reached the I-10. And now one Reddit comment kind of suggested that, and this Redditor actually has done this trip himself a few times, they suggested that maybe Jason was driving here, and at this intersection, he saw that a train was passing. Because you can see, guys, this is a train track. Maybe he saw the train pass, and to circumvent the train, even though I don't really see how you do this, Jason may have wanted to continue heading straight, and he would have taken the next right, or the right after that, or even the third right. But he got confused and took the kind of left-ish straight route and got on to the Salt Flat Road. So for a better explanation, I've made this screenshot. As you can see, guys, he quits using Waze here. He was supposed to take this right where the red arrow points, but maybe there was a train. This big red line indicates the location of a potential train that sometimes passes Lulling, and apparently there's a lot of train traffic here. So maybe he headed straight, but then he got confused and got onto this road that is indicated by the yellow arrow, and went on to essentially drive for quite a while, actually, on this weird dirt road. Now, we have just jumped on this article from Fox 7 Austin, and this was on January 14th. This is when earlier on in the year, on January 14th, 2022, we got new details, and these details kind of painted a bit of a different picture. Essentially, the most interesting thing here is that I'm just gonna read this real quickly. Landry FaceTimed his friend in Missouri City approximately 1 hour before leaving his San Marcos apartment. Detective Ferry said that Landry's friend screen recorded the conversation because, quote, Jason was so messed up that he didn't think he was going to remember it later. So 1 hour to going on this weird, not weird trip, just on this trip to go back home to Missouri City, Jason Landry was apparently really stoned. We also can see that Detective Ferry explained that all signs point to us that Landry is under the influence, and we know that he's going to get in the car and try to navigate his way to Missouri City, where his parents are not expecting him. He was not due home. He was going to hang out with his buddies, play video games, and get high. The recording had no sound. The sheriff's office attempted to have university-level experts lip-read the conversation, but efforts were actually unsuccessful, meaning the sheriff's office had to rely on Landry's friend for the record. And the investigator's quote is, they're talking about spiritual awakening and enlightenment and opening his third eye and drug consumption. Anyhow, I think it's about time for us to jump to this video because law enforcement actually released the Snapchat footage, basically the last known footage of Jason Landry. So let's look at it. All right, I'm gonna play this right now. So let's watch.
All signs point to us that he is under the influence. And we know that he's going to get in the car and try to navigate his way to Missouri City, where his parents are not expecting him. He was not due home. He was going to hang out with buddies, play video games, and get high.
Jason FaceTiming one of those friends ahead of the trip. His friend screen recording the conversation.
And Jason's friend thought he was planning on meeting Jason later, and thought, man, Jason's so high right now, he's not going to remember what he's saying.
Jason seen on video rolling the same joints a state trooper would recover from his backpack just hours later.
But we can just see how saturated his armpits are. He's extremely sweaty. He's indoors, and he's sweating from just sitting down. You know.
Yeah, look at this. Jason is extremely sweaty in this video. Kind of makes you think maybe he was feeling super hot, that's why he removed his clothes. Maybe that's that paradoxical undressing caused by hypothermia. It was really cold, you know?
We're 30 minutes into the video and he's just sweated through his shirt. Certainly seems relevant knowing that in less than an hour Jason's going to be disrobing in a very cold, austere environment.
The screen recording does not have audio, forcing Ferry to rely on Jason's friend's recollection of the conversation.
They're talking about spiritual awakening and enlightenment and opening his third eye and their drug consumption.
That conversation, Ferry says, is consistent with Jason's internet activity in the minutes leading up to his disappearance.
He's Googling, how long can you live in the woods without food? You know, how long can you go in the wilderness? He's looking up some...
Wait, so this is where I have a quick question because I didn't understand this part. So is he Googling how to live in the wilderness just minutes before leaving on the trip back to Missouri City? Or is he doing this a few days prior? Because if he's doing this like literally before he heads out, that's kind of crazy.
Spiritual enlightenment practices. He's looking up different strains of marijuana and different how to combine those. He's looking up different and he's talking about psychedelics and how they have impacted his life and his perception of spiritual awakeness.
Alongside with that video from Snapchat, law enforcement released the case file, and I want to read a few interesting details from the case file. I'm not going to read the whole thing, of course, but I'm just going to read what law enforcement believe happened to Jason Landry. So, the case details are such that at approximately, 10:55 p.m. on Sunday, December 13th, 2020, Jason Landry, a 21-year-old male college student, left San Marcos to drive to Missouri City, Texas. He was alone. Landry used a navigation app called Waze, but switched to Snapchat to check his messages upon entering Lulling. He consequently missed his turnoff and instead drove east out of Lulling on Salt Flat Road. This road is not in good shape and eventually turns into gravel. At approximately 11:30 p.m., Landry lost control and then overcorrected. His Nissan Altima went off the east side of the road and hit the post of a barbed wired fence. It is unknown if Jason Landry was wearing his seatbelt. The vehicle's airbag did not deploy. There was no blood inside the car, but the possibility of injury cannot be discounted. The vehicle was not drivable as one of its wheels was damaged when it struck the fence in the accident. Landry left his mobile phone and his jacket inside of the car. His backpack containing his wallet with money and credit cards was found on Salt Flat Road, approximately 80 feet south of the accident scene. Landry's clothing, including his watch, underwear, and shoes, were also found on Salt Flat Road, a further 100 feet south. The area has low population density, though sometimes oil workers are present. There are a few buildings and structures nearby, some vacant, others abandoned. Some lights from oil tanks and drilling equipment are visible. Salt Flat Road is gravel at this location but becomes paved closer to Lulling. Most of road here is bordered by barbed wire fences, which would be difficult to climb, particularly for an unclothed person, though not impossible. There are a number of creeks, streams, ponds, and reservoirs in the area. Coyotes and wild boars are present, and the region is a popular hunting spot in the fall. I also want to address the fact that the investigation kinda now suspects that wild boars ate his body. That's why we can't find him. That, like, actually animals are present at the scene that will eat a dead human, and that human will vanish into thin air. So maybe this is what happened to Jason. And lastly, the analysis is that, basically they begin with, in a missing persons case, and investigators first need to determine if the party is alive or dead, and if dead, the probable causes: murder, suicide, accident, or natural causes. In the present case, the evidence suggests Jason Landry died from natural causes, most likely hypothermia, some hours following the car accident at 23:30 p.m. For some reason, he abandoned his vehicle, leaving behind his jacket and mobile phone. He walked south on Salt Flat Road, back in the direction he had just came from. At a point 800 feet south of his vehicle, he dropped his backpack, and then at a point 900 feet south, he removed and left all his clothing, including his shoes. It is difficult to walk barefoot on a gravel road. This behavior appears to be an example of paradoxical undressing resulting from Landry feeling hot. Possible causes include hypothermia, excited delirium from drugs, and or internal bleeding. Whatever the specific cause, if Landry felt hot, he would not have felt the need to seek shelter inside a house of a building. Despite the cold temperature, he may have been enticed to enter water to cool down, or may have fallen into a creek or pond because of his drug impairment. It is also possible he eventually engaged in thermal burrowing or hide and die syndrome. Most likely he died not far from the clothing recovery site. However, as discussed above, his remains would now be skeletonized, disarticulated, and spread over a large area. But once again, where the hell are those remains? Because we have nothing at this point. Also wanted to quickly go over this case file just like at face value for you guys to see. So basically, this is the entirety of the case file. It's 27 pages. It's not, there's only like maybe 3 pages of reading here. Most of the other things are basically assets. So this is basically the dirt road that Jason Landry, drove upon. And this was actually the only way I was able to locate the crash site, because I'm not joking, like, I found 4 different crash site locations in media publications. Like, it seems like everyone got it wrong, but this case file got it correct. So we have some pictures. This is the abandoned house that we're still gonna look at when we're gonna be looking at the body cam footage just in a little bit. These are some tankers. that were seen. They essentially were visible. We have some more map stuff, and these were interesting. These are basically, I don't even understand what's happening here, because how can you understand? But there's a lot of searching being done here. So just to paint a better picture, look at how in-depth the search was. I think all of these lines kind of indicate where people have searched, and these are some crazy amounts of searching, and to not find anything, it's pretty weird. And these are the locations where it's likely that Jason's remains should be found. But once again, to my knowledge, up till this day, no remains have been found so far. Okay, and I think it's a good time for us to look at the body cam footage, so let's look at it.
So what do we know about that house, the 2379?
That house, 2379, he's referring to, let me actually jump to that house. House 2379 is actually this house right here. And this is the crash site where Jason crashed his car. I think we can quickly take a look at, how it looks on the Google Street view. As you can see, it's like kind of, on both sides of the road we can see barbed wire fences, as you can see, and then Jason was heading in the northern direction, so he was actually heading there, but then he crashed his car and he started walking back, and you see this red line, I'm sorry. So basically this red line is the indication of, basically this is 900 feet. So somewhere here he dropped off his backpack, and then somewhere here he dropped off his clothes, and that abandoned house is here, house 2379. So the people that are, we're just looking at the body cam, they're actually talking about this house right here. So let's just jump back into it. Let's just jump back into the body cam footage.
Is it abandoned?
It's abandoned. Nobody lives there, but I don't know if you saw all his clothes and stuff. He's completely naked wherever he's at. There's blood on his underwear.
So we got 27.
This was peculiar to me because we just heard this guy is the I believe the volunteer firefighter, and there are two law enforcement people that are looking into it, and now we just heard this guy say that he saw blood on the underwear. I found it particularly interesting because this is the blood on the underwear, guys. It's like a very little piece from what I can see from the official picture. So, and it's really dark. So, well, maybe if you just shine a light on it, maybe it makes sense. Let's continue.
White male.
Go.
Wouldn't let him have that.
Cool. You want me to have it all or just this?
Yeah.
Okay. Righty, 23327. Three 9894860 3989 4860. It's gonna be a 27 that was located in the backpack.
For everyone who's listening to this on the podcast apps, we're basically just looking at the law enforcement agents going through the backpack that was found 800 feet away down south from the vehicle, and now they're gonna discover the drugs. So let's listen to the law enforcement's reaction when they discovered the drugs. Well, essentially it was like a few joints. Remember from the Snapchat video, Jason was rolling up a few joints, so they're gonna make the discovery shortly. Let's see.
I'm telling him, I live right up there on Soda Springs, and I can kind of tell the vehicles, but I ain't never seen this vehicle.
Contacts.
Right, college kid.
So it looks like right.
Oh my goodness.
Uh-oh.
Yep.
That's why I didn't want to leave it back.
That or he's a delivery boy.
Right, so we see that law enforcement people have just found those joints just now. It's once again, it's unknown if Jason was actually high, or we know that he probably smoked when he was back home in his apartment.
641004 County. You got that verbal?
Yeah.
We now see law enforcement kind of looking around, looking at the bushes. At the general scene, we two law enforcement cars. Two responding officers.
Man, it looked like the boy was a lifeguard. He's got a red whistle in on his rearview mirror. It's a wonder he didn't get killed. Because he creamed a tree.
I don't understand what this guy just said. Did he just said, I wonder why he didn't get killed?
Where's the car? Behind us?
It's back there.
Okay.
Around his den.
I'm not collecting up the clothes, but I'm taking this. Okay? And I'm going to go through the rest of it.
I'm thinking if he's from Missouri City, he's still on foot. You want me to go back and hit Pumper and jump 86? I came off of Spruce. I wanted to come from Luling North. I didn't see nobody, but I never hit the side roads.
I came from
1322. So we met in the middle.
Yeah. Tell you what, the you said there was an abandoned house up there?
Yeah, so that house in
Did
the
you
right
check it
window, and I'm about to check it out, but it has the curtains are open, some don't have curtains, so I was able to see through it. Small house. On the right window, it looks like there's something hanging on a ladder, like a shirt or a jacket.
Uh-huh.
So I'm gonna go back and check it out.
Okay, go check that out.
All right.
That's what I saw. That's why I said,
Yeah.
hang it.
And this is the house, yo. This house was super creepy, and I do have to wonder if Jason actually got into this house, because he dropped all of his clothes fairly close to where this house is located. So it does, it does raise a question: did he pass this house? But once again, if he was experiencing paradoxical undressing, he was feeling very hot, there wouldn't be an actual need for him to go inside of this house. But why this law enforcement agent decided to go back to this house was essentially because through the windows he can actually spot a jacket kind of hanging there, and we're gonna see shortly. So let's look.
Soda Springs, I'll give you a call.
Mm-hmm. 8233. Also, for 14, there's gonna be a small barn next to it. Sheriff's office!
Sign me out of this job. Essentially, we're just looking at some unoccupied house. It doesn't look abandoned per se, because there is a little barn with tools. We can see that the law enforcement officer will now get closer. It seems like it's unoccupied, but it's not abandoned, if that makes any sense. We see, I think, a satellite dish there on the left. And now the officer is going to look into essentially the house. It looks clean. It doesn't look like it's like a,
Sheriff's office!
it doesn't look like it's being, I don't know, like people go there to do drugs. It's like a low population area, so I think there's just not a lot of people in general. And this is the coat. We can see the coat a little bit on the right hand side. There's the coat. So that's why the law enforcement agent decided to go back here, but there was nothing else found, I think. Alright, guys, so let me know what you guys think is the likely outcome in this case. I kind of suspect that maybe Jason got out of the car and he was experiencing, paradoxical undressing, and therefore he removed all of his clothes and he essentially just died somewhere, laid down and died. It's very sad, and I feel terrible for the family. But I think that's what the case is. I don't think he's alive, and I think there's a chance that we'll never know we'll never find his remains. Law enforcement says that his remains may have been devoured by the wildlife, which I kind of believe is a possible scenario. And yeah, many searches have been done. Still no sign of Jason. I don't know if we will ever get a concrete resolution. So leave your thoughts in the comment section, guys, and I'll see you on the next episode. I hope you guys enjoyed.